Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Frontier. Before we get into the regular post-match, just wanted to highlight the fact that it is now less than 1 week until Toffee Fest 2025. Sean and I are very excited to be attending. Tony Sampson was kind enough to send us a little bit of information for those who might still be on the fence about attending and some information for maybe those who will be there. We, of course, saw the announcement this week that none other than Everton ambassador Graham Stewart will be in attendance. Met him a couple of times and actually interviewed him in the past. This is the second Toffee Fest event organized by the North American Toffees Network. Last year's inaugural event in Chicago was, of course, attended by Everton giant Adrian Heath. We get Graham Stewart this year. And really just want to highlight, this is an entirely supporter-led and organized event, so specific credit goes to Paul Brown for the San Diego Toffees for helping orchestrate all of this. There's a lot on the agenda, which Sean will talk about in just a moment, but more than 170 Blues have registered and are expected to be in attendance, so it's going to be a really fun time. Exclusive merch will be available. We saw some cool designs and t-shirts that were on sale this week. There's going to be raffles and competition to raise money for charity, and there's more than 20 North American Toffee supporter groups coordinating a national charity effort supporting food charities by either making collections, donations, or volunteering on the day. So just a tremendous effort and showing by the North American Toffees, and I'm beyond excited to be a part of it. Sean, take a moment and just walk us through the agenda for the weekend because it's going to be a blast.
Absolutely, James, and really, really excited about it, especially, in good old San Diego, California, so the weather will be really good as I look outside to a snowy Colorado. Going into Friday's event, so the event kickoff starts on 6 p.m. It's a welcome reception and charity raffle at the Harp, and then, of course, followed by some live music by the Fuchs at 9 p.m., so really fun time there. But, of course, get your sleep, Toffees, because we have an early start in terms of the game. Essentially 6:30 a.m. onwards, we'll have the watch party at the Harp, and then a post-match Q&A with Graham Stewart, and of course another raffle just in the good old spirit of giving. And at 11 a.m., they're going to have a nice picnic at the beach as well as a kick-around, so bring your boots if you're well-inclined on Mission Bay, and the exact location to be confirmed. At 4 p.m., they're going to do a tailgate for the San Diego Wave game with the Sirens outside of Snapdragon Stadium, and then, of course, the game at 7:30. If you want tickets, you can just contact the North American Toffees for that. And then if you have the time on Sunday, at 10:30, they're doing a toffee brunch. Of course, location, I believe, would probably be at the hotel, but we can confirm later. And then if you do have some time, they are planning to do a Rockies-Padres game at Petco Park. So pretty jam-packed agenda. Really, really excited for it. And it's just going to be really fun just kind of singing with the Blues and having a great time.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time, and we'll be there, hopefully providing some coverage and getting to talk with a lot of the Toffees from around the country. Just can't wait. Leaving on Thursday, so I'll be in San Diego a day early, so it's just going to be a really fun weekend. And echo your sentiment, Sean, looking forward to the California weather because we don't have any snow in Maine, but it's still pretty cold most of the time. So can't wait to be on the beach in April. Very exciting. And with that, let's move on to the regular post-match. Of course, following Everton 1, Arsenal 1, making it 4 consecutive home draws at Goodison Park for Everton for the first time in 10 years. This was not the most exciting game, to say the least, but Trossard, of course, scored the opening goal, and then Jack Harrison won the penalty, and Ndiaye converted it. We'll get into all of the details, but we're going to start with the summary quote from our listeners, and I went with Peter Appleby at PeteRabbit68 today, who said, "A good point against a quality opponent, and stop the presses. We were awarded a pen. Miracles never cease. Pickford was very strong in goal again, up the Toffees." So despite the maybe not so thrilling match, a point against the team in second place, not anything to turn our noses up at.
You know what's unbelievable? I am just realizing now that Pete was Pete Rabbit, not Peter Rabbit the whole time. It's unbelievable. Like, if you think about how many times we've had exchanges with him. Like, it's literally dawning on me right now. It shows you how astute my observational powers are. I'll probably get fired from my scouting gig now. But, like, sorry.
Shout
Pete.
out to Pete. Sorry,
Yeah,
Pete.
Pete's great. I mean, it's just, I don't know how I missed that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Ryan, it's like leaving the H off Pittsburgh, So going into score
are we gonna
predictions.
start now? Because, like, I'm happy to have a long conversation about a specific player. If that's really what
No,
you want.
we're not going to do
no,
that.
not right now. We'll save that for later. But yeah, going into score predictions, quite a few. Of course, 1-1, very popular prediction every match. Of course, we can't start with none other than Tony Sampson, Mark, Southeast Michigan Toffee, Bad Gumby, Nick Weinstein, Bugs, Drewberg, 1878. You're probably right. Mike and Groza. So great job, guys, on getting that correct. And with that, we'll go into lineups, James, for Everton.
Yeah, we actually had some significant changes on the day. First and foremost, I think the most exciting of those changes, maybe the only exciting change one could argue, maybe a certain co-host would argue, is Ndiaye getting back into the starting lineup and no knee brace today, which was a very welcome sight, I must admit, after his sub-appearance in the derby.
We're not a little concerned about that, though, because he just looked a little gimpy, I thought, last week. I don't know. I thought this was a little aggressive, but he looked fine.
Yeah, he looked like, honestly, had a great performance, all things considered, especially considering how the rest of the team played. I was a little nervous. I'm still a little nervous of any players coming back from injury, but ultimately happy to see players returning to health. We also saw Tim Irabunum and Nathan Patterson move into the starting lineup with Charlie Alcaraz and James Garner dropping to the bench, where we also saw none other than Dwight McNeil make his return to the first team squad for the first time in over 4 months. Patterson slotting in at left back, a really interesting decision. We'll talk about his performance. Irabunum obviously sitting a little bit deeper, and we saw Mikolenko miss out on the squad entirely, so hopefully he's not feeling the after effects of the derby too much. I didn't really see any comments on why he was excluded exactly, but nevertheless, a pretty dramatic change in lineup, and I'd argue probably a significant drop in quality as well. Going against Arsenal, I'll hand it off to Sean to go through their team.
Just a quick note on Ndiaye, especially in terms of the injury risk. Just looking at his close-up in the penalty, it looked like he had like small squares for shin guards. So like the guy is just not scared. To your point, Ryan, it was just, he looked like a little gimpy, but I think just overall looked fine. But for Arsenal, heavily rotated squad, as we predicted last pod, given the Real Madrid Champions League fixture. Gabriel actually, come to find out, was lost for the season that day. Bummer for them, leading Kiwior to essentially partner Saliba. Ben White makes his return, which, he definitely had his moments today. And, of course, Lewis Skelly always seems to be in some sort of drama-filled moment with the dramatic Premier League, so interesting there. And then, of course, Jorginho comes into the midfield with that rotation, as well as Raheem Sterling and Nwaneri. And then, of course, you see Declan Rice, absolute stud, plays every game with Mikel Merino, and then Trossard leading their front line. So interesting kind of lineup, a little bit of a patchwork lineup for Arsenal, but you expected as the game went on for some of their bigger guns to come in, given trying to manage minutes, especially Saka, just recently coming back last game.
Pretty impressive with two 18-year-olds in the starting lineup, right?
Absolutely.
These guys are pretty big prospects, and Nwaneri in particular is really well thought of, and you could see in moments why. So I look forward to when we have similar things. Although Harrison Armstrong's doing okay. I'm just throwing it out there, but these guys are, top of the deck, really. You would think too, when going into key matchups, there are a couple ones out there I think that you would look at and say, okay, maybe there's some opportunity here too. Gabriel's a massive loss, the former Everton signee, kind of, almost, not quite.
So close.
Yeah, he's just a terrific player and a great compliment to Saliba, who's one of the best center backs on the planet, if not the best. And I think you could legitimately make a case that he would be one of them. So I think that first matchup, kind of Beto against those guys to see how he would do. We'll talk about kind of Tark and JB down the middle against their lack of a number 9, really. They don't have one, and on set pieces. But I think it's very natural when you look at Arsenal to look at the matchups against their wingers. Arteta does a very good job creating movement. It's similar to some of the positional play stuff that Pep Guardiola does, and trying to get those matchups out wide. And I think there were times where, with the number of switches that we had to make, they actually got some individual matchups that probably weren't expected. But that's their danger spots, And I think it's fair to go into this match in those matchups and think a little bit optimistic, knowing that you've got Sterling and Nwaneri out there rather than Saka and Martinelli, you know what I mean? At least in the first half. And, I don't know. It's an interesting matchup, and they're a difficult team to play against for sure.
Yeah, they always are. They have obviously far more depth than Everton. So even with the significant rotation, it was going to be a difficult match, with us also rotating and playing a number of guys out of position. So it was going to be challenging. We get into the game, and it proved to be relatively challenging early. Nathan Patterson dodging that yellow for what looked like just kind of a reckless challenge. I thought that was a no-brainer yellow. He was really lucky to get away with no discipline there. Everton really didn't have a lot of threatening moments. We got into some threatening areas in the 8th minute. Ndiaye involved for the first time of many. a through ball to Beto, kind of an interchange with Doucouré. Neither of them can get a shot away. Also wanted to highlight in the 9th minute a really nice tribute to Kevin Campbell, a banner walked around the stadium. Really great applause from obviously away fans and home fans alike. Rest in peace to Super Kev.
Yeah, and then in essentially right after that, you see this tremendous corner by Declan Rice, and Jared does a really good job under pressure, just making that look a lot easier than it was heading that out. But of course, that was goal bound, right? So that would have been a really tough way to start. And then, of course, there was just a ton of controversy in a game of controversy. But then again, it was just another boring start, right? In the 17th, Jake gets a yellow on a VAR review. And of course, it comes to be potentially dissent. Then, of course, Ben White just looking like he's trying out for the Olympic diving team for England. So it's just, guys, what do we think about this one? It was a very odd situation.
It did feel like they were giving it almost after the review. I'm sure they'll claim that wasn't the case because that's not possible, I don't think. I don't know. I mean, the whole match, I don't think it was one-sided necessarily, the refereeing. So I can't point to saying that the referee really altered. I mean, definitely had an impact on the result. But man, it just felt like it wasn't very well controlled. And I think in a different match with different players with maybe a little bit more on the line, things could have been very, very bad. But I thought this was very strange, to be perfectly honest.
A lot of strange, sequences of events on the day. In the early stages, not a lot of great chances for either team. In the 23rd minute, Tarkowski, kind of an errant pass to Ghana, gives it to Trossard, and Trossard running at our back line. There were a number of times where Arsenal just found a lot of space, either in behind or in the wide areas, and we're just able to have our entire defensive unit backpedaling a little bit desperately. And in this case, it's Jared Branthwaite there at the last moment with a really nice tackle to prevent the shot. Lucky, but good positioning and obviously pace shown by Jared there.
Unbelievable. His recovery pace at times for a guy with his length is tremendous. But yeah, I think you could tell in the match, as much as we at times wanted to get up the pitch, this personnel is not going to show the kind of control you need really against a team like this. And, I would have expected us to bunker in a little bit more. I mean, the second half was, I think, a little bit more typical of what I would have expected. But every time we push forward, you just kind of got a feeling that they might get back at us. And it's very interesting because Liverpool they were not very aggressive off the counter. And I was surprised about that because they like playing a very much more vertical game than Arsenal did. Arsenal kind of did the opposite. That being said, off the counter, when you don't have kind of a legitimate 9 that's stiff with Trossard up there, there's a lot of opportunities for exchanges and them running at us and dealing with things at open play. But like, for example, when we bunkered in, you could see Arsenal was struggling to move the ball side to side a little bit. They didn't have their typical quality. I mean, there were 2 big switches that both went long out of bounds in a row. And I was thinking, okay, we're set up pretty well here. And then boom, right after that, we have an example of what we were talking about in terms of them kind of off a counter, a giveaway somewhat that created their goal. And I mean, it was a massive chance, but I felt like it wasn't the only one. There were several of these in the first half, because in between these moments, it was fairly even, but these first half moments were big. And I don't know, this is a little bit just of a miscommunication, maybe some bad luck here.
Yeah, it seemed like a miscommunication and a little bit of disorganization combined. This is where Ghana and Branthwaite both go for kind of the same ball that's launched up in the air. Ghana ultimately wins it, heads it backwards, but because Branthwaite has also stepped up to try to win it, he's not there to receive the back pass. Tarkowski's then caught in space. Trossard, it's actually Sterling, who jumps on it and just, again, direct dribbling right at goal. Trossard making the run alongside him. He lays it off to Trossard. Tark trying to come over to cover, but we know Trossard in those areas is pretty dangerous, and it's a good finish, but it's also a poor chance to give away through the miscommunication in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, take your pick. You can kind of go everywhere on this one in terms of I'm not going to just put Ghana as like the sole proprietor for this mistake, right?
Oh, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Was he not supposed to go after the header? I mean, come on.
Exactly, right. And I mean, he was just everywhere today once again. And I think this is just a situation where, real time, if I see Raheem Sterling running at me, I'm probably going to look at Trossard as the lethal guy to probably be a little bit closer to, but I also that's asking a lot to kind of make those decisions quickly, right? And then, you have essentially Jake, which of course, we'll get to, not his greatest day. I think give him a little bit too much respect, right? And of course, it's a good finish though. I mean, it is a good finish. Could we have done better? Yes, but I think unfortunately that's kind of been the common theme with a lot of our goals that we've given up lately. It's just, it's not an egregious mistake by any means, but it's a play that I think, given the personnel and given being out of position there, not the greatest.
I think it's one where if Jake has a little bit more awareness, knowing he's got Tark cover to his left, he's got to go after Trossard a little bit more aggressively. That being said, the shot kind of went through him. It wasn't that great an angle, and so I don't know what happened a little bit with Pick either, but obviously Pickford was very good today, so, can't really blame him. I mean, it's a pretty tight end.
He could have
been
screened by Jake. In that one, so he could have saw it late, Ryan. But to your point, it's not an error by any means, but with how great Pickford was, it wouldn't be surprising if he saved that.
I think also part of the problem is, too, the second you go down, you're like, we do not have the firepower out there to necessarily get back into that. And it just, we started kind of unraveled a little bit. There was lack of organization, sometimes which is expected with new people in there. It's interesting. Beto was working his tail off, too, and he was battling and trying to do what he could and actually showed some quality a little bit on the ball, like the back heel, things like that. But again, so isolated. So I just didn't feel like we were going to get into this one very easily. But sure enough, in the 36th minute, we had the person that I would have counted on to be the difference maker, Nathan Patterson, coming out here and swerving and dribbling, slashing through the half space, laying off to Ndiaye, deflected cross, wins the corner. No, in all seriousness, I mean, it's also tough. I mean, Patterson did play some inverted left back at Rangers, but I mean, totally different situation. They were on the ball the whole time, front foot all the way forward. It's probably asking him a little bit much to play there. Are you guys a little bit surprised Ashley Young just didn't come in and play left back?
Yes, in some respects, yeah, because I think that's a pretty obvious decision to make. But I also think, given where we're at in the table, where the state of the season, Moyes is probably trying to give some of these guys an opportunity. I mean, I can't think of why else you would want Patterson in there over Young.
Yeah, Irabunum, same thing. You want to see what you got there and put him in there. I mean, and look, I guess you can't really expect us to suddenly regroup and go after him. So I was thinking kind of, let's just get to halftime. We'll regroup, we'll re-tactic, whatever we need to do. And then there's this massive, massive chance in the 47th. And it felt a lot like some of the previous chances, too, where just kind of got open a little bit. And this is one was interesting, too, because we were bunkered in for a while, and then the ball went back. It's a fantastic ball over the top, though. I mean, there's no argument about it. But, I mean, geez, there's a lot bad about this play.
And, in the 47th minute, as Ryan said, huge Arsenal chance. Kyrier with a ball over the top, runs in behind. Tark just, once again, gets really aggressive. Trossard does not go down. Pickford makes a really good save on him. And then, of course, Tark, once again, he loves doing this, but blocks Declan Rice. But upon replay, at first, I was very nervous that this could have been called back. Before seeing the replay, sorry. Just because, seeing him kind of lunge in there. But he ends up kind of getting a little bit of the ball. And so, probably hard to review that. But, just kind of another situation where Pickford really came up big for us. But just how easy it was to get caught over the top like that.
And it shouldn't have been possible. This wasn't necessarily on the break. And again, you can't play such a deep line where the space you're having to defend is so big, especially but I mean, their midfield, I mean, they had guys that were good on the ball, but not great athletes. I don't know. I mean, look, the one thing Arsenal do very well is they keep the ball in deep and they keep pressure on teams. Mikel Merino in particular today kept dropping back and dealing with some of our long passes and clearances. And I don't know, it just wasn't working. There was a little bit of a glimmer of hope right before half in the play where Ndiaye kind of got the ball in. I'll tell you what, Ndiaye with his back to goal in that left half space, I mean, that's like his office man, or should be. He's so dangerous there. And I kind of wonder if his fitness was a little bit better if he would have gotten his feet under him and given it a little better a chance. But this was a good chance, and it was kind of like your first combination play that looked kind of smooth, maybe a little bit of optimism going into halftime.
Yeah, for me, I mean, just the fact that we got Ndiaye involved in a play in the final third, because I don't think we did that nearly enough, but just getting him back up to speed. And it's a good little give and go, good movement by him to make the pass and then make the run to receive it back at a good angle, and the curling shot is over the bar, but a glimmer of hope for Everton to get back into the game.
Yeah, and then we get into halftime, and it's kind of like you have a chance to adjust, right, and change, but as dominant as Arsenal was, I mean, we had some chances. It's not like we didn't have the ball, but we had 15 touches in the box against their 21. You know what I mean? So with all that possession they had, I think the weird part was that we really did try and get on the ball at times. You know, it just, I was a little bit surprised at how it kind of played out and what we were trying to do. Trossard had 7 of those 21 touches, which, okay, you know, and if you get that guy as almost like a false 9 on the box or in the box with the ball, they become a little more unpredictable. But fundamentally, the optimism was a lot driven by the people they had at the wings, which promptly changed right at halftime.
Yeah, at that point, Arteta had seen enough. He had seen enough, and he wanted to get Saka and Martinelli on for Ndiaye and Sterling. Terrifying substitutions, honestly. And, you know, Saka just coming back from a long-term injury, trying to get him some consistent minutes prior to their clash with Real Madrid next week. We don't have Mikeleko in there to stymie him. What are we going to do? But fortunately, it didn't take long into the second half for us to get a bit of luck, one might say. Do we think this was lucky? This is, of course, the penalty. It's Lewis Skelly pulling Jack down in the box. It's awarded on the field. It's confirmed by VAR. Really interesting play. What do you guys think of it?
I learned something today, and what I learned is I think Everton fans just are so scorned by being just kind of unjust with penalties that they couldn't enjoy the moment. You know, it was, oh, this wasn't a penalty, you know, and I was like the Liberty Mutual song where I was like, penalty, penalty, penalty. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, like, I don't care. Like, also, by the way, like, if you look at the angle, Lewis Skelly's kind of like leaning into him, right? So it's like from a momentum perspective, like I feel like there's contact. Is it soft? Sure, it is. Like I think it is. And I surprised that it was not overturned. Or yeah, I was surprised, but I'm going to take it every day of the week. And for us, you know, I think what it is that just the Premier League didn't want to see anybody but Element Ndiaye take a penalty, right? And then that's why those penalties were overturned. So.
I love how the chief of the optimism train is suddenly giving people grief for being less than optimistic. I mean, come on, man. We're just being objective about the penalty. I don't think it's a penalty at all. Not at all. So I will say this. It is a foul, though, and it's a foul outside the box for me. So he's got his arm around him. Jack gets on the other side of him. Good for Jack. I think the advantage, though, Jack had in this particular instance is the amount of hair that he cut off, I think gave him that extra little inch of pace just to get around the backside, I think, to get in front of him. I think that was the difference. No kind of Quasimodo type Last Samurai imitation today with the man bun. No, in all seriousness, too, I think the debate is really, it's a foul. The debate is, does he kind of let go when he gets in the box or not? So maybe we're scoring, Sean. I mean, maybe you're right. But as an objective person, you're looking at this and you're kind of like, this is the one we get? Really? Like, of all the times that we've had penalties, and if I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm probably pretty frustrated about this one. You're thinking, okay, we've brought these guys in. We're up 1-0. We're going to clean these guys out. I don't care if it's at Goodison or all that other stuff. And this happens. Maybe Lewis Skelly, a little bit of immaturity on this one. Like, I mean, maybe lack of awareness. But James, all right, what do you think? Penalty or not penalty?
It's not a penalty. If that's given against us, I'm livid, but I'm with Sean. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm going to say we've been burned so many times by bad calls that when one finally goes in our favor, I'm just going to be happy about it. And I'm happy that Ilman Ndiaye is the man of the moment to step up and bury it so cool, calm, and collected. Raya guesses completely wrong. Ndiaye fools him. And we're level, even though we really don't deserve to be. It's our first shot on target of the match.
Yeah, you know, I will say this. One thing that would be very funny after the pod, if we took some of the crazy sayings that all of us throw out sometimes and try and find the origination of them. Like, how on earth, gift horse in a mouth, if you think about that one? Like, Where did that come from? Like, if you start thinking about that one, that's like, wow, that's really weird. I think what's a little disappointing is, and maybe we should expect this, is after the penalty, our response. I mean, maybe we should expect this, right? Maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic because I didn't wake up grumpy. But in all seriousness, the numbers after the penalty are absolutely unbelievable, right? They're so bad to look at.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. And I actually thought for maybe the first 5 minutes after the penalty, we showed a little boost in energy.
Yeah, that was about it, though.
The Goodison crowd was up for it, trying to push us on. We were pressing a little bit higher. But yeah, after that little 5-minute burst, it became very one-sided. 8-1 in shots. 78% possession to Arsenal. They were passing it around for fun. They had out-dribbled us 5-3. They won 11 aerials to our 3.
Is that dispossession stat real?
We were dispossessed 5 times.
But we didn't have a single dispossession of them. I looked up the numbers too in the second half. We'll go look at them after. They're crazy. I think we had 3 tackles in the second half. I mean, that is not good. In their defense, they're very good at keeping the ball and rotating players, but you could tell they started to really focus, too, on our right side. I mean, if you looked at the who scored numbers, they were 46% of the time they attacked down the left. And this is where I felt like they were really getting a lot of momentum, getting the ball out wide. Jake had himself in some tough spots against Martinelli, who's very quick and difficult 1v1. And we just kept switching over there, and it just bad matchup after bad matchup. But you're right. I mean, we did have that one opportunity right after the goal where Ghana, can we talk about the fake pass and dribble? This guy, I think he's getting better. Is that possible? I mean, Decore kind of takes his time. It does okay with the shot. Dukes just looks, I mean, the difference between those two, by the way, in terms of how fluid they look now versus what they looked like 10 years ago is unbelievable. I feel like they need to submit Ghana to science in some capacity. How
does one submit someone to science?
Well, you fill out a form, a requisition. Science, right? I mean, I know the song. What are you talking about?
The Sports Science School in Liverpool, James.
That's right.
I mean, I think Ghana might set the record for a transfer fee for a 45-year-old the way he's going, because he is just on the ascent, as you say, Ryan. And he is one person on the pitch that does not need Rogaine. He might be the only pitch, and for those, it was a inside joke in the Discord. So if you don't know, it's another reason to join the Discord. There's a lot of Rogaine discussion today. But yeah, just to your point, Ryan, I think we have to give him flowers, because that's not the first time he's done something like that, and in real time to do that against a team like Arsenal, right? Really, really well done.
Be very clear, that was not a drug advertisement. Just to be clear, I know that's coming under scrutiny right now. We're not endorsing or saying it's bad to use Rogaine. Just very clear. I want to make sure I don't want to get it censored or get fined or anything. So just laying that out there.
Yes, very neutral on Rogaine. We have to be for the purposes of this show. But at this point, after that opportunity, Arsenal come down the other end. They win a corner, but really, I think at the 60-minute mark, Arteta has seen enough, makes a substitution. Ben White off for Timber. Timber comes on and just is obnoxious for 30 minutes.
Speaking of Grumpy,
Lord.
this, I mean, just insane. Was he, did somebody pull a prank on him, before he got on the pitch? He just had the same look of disgust, just coming on. Maybe he just didn't enjoy the sun, but yeah, it kind of goes into just what we'll see in a bit. But yeah, in the 62nd minute, I mean, they had the announcers talking about Lewis Skelly as the next big thing after this. But yeah, terrible defending by us, allows Lewis Skelly to dribble 40 yards to the edge of the box, where eventually he's cleaned out by Tark, picks up a yellow. Of course, I think the adage would be that Jack should have fouled him, but I think he was trying to. He just, Lewis Skelly essentially was just going up. Declan Rice takes the free kick. It's ripped. Pickford, good on him to not cheat, came at him with high velocity and does a good job of palming that away. And then finally, we get some subs. Maybe not the subs that everybody wanted, but we did get some subs.
Yeah, the subs were needed for sure. I'm trying to hesitate to get into too much detail on this one, but you had Jimmy Garner coming in for Tim Irabunum and Broja in for Beto. And so a couple different things to unpack here. So Tim Irabunum came in, and I think you got to give a guy like this a shot. He's still very young, and he's got all sorts of physical attributes. He just does some stuff that I think is very difficult to change behavior-wise, and we've talked about him in the past. The numbers were not good. He's dispossessed 4 times. No one else has dispossessed more than 2. 0 for 1 in tackles, 1 interception. Had a couple block passes. I think if there was anything encouraging, I think some of the angles he took in closing down players was better today, and I think that was encouraging. 1 pass into the final third. It just didn't impact the match at all, and I'm not expecting him to get on it and dominate and everything, but the one thing he has got to cut out is just the dribbling. And I think it's a lack of awareness sometimes. Maybe the game is moving a little bit fast, and Arsenal moves the ball very, very well. But too often when he doesn't know what to do, he just resorts to carrying the ball and holding it too long. And I think the problem with that is the impact on the team for that. Everyone has stuff they need to work on, right? Every player has weaknesses and things like that. This is a really bad one, though, because if you put him deeper, you expose your whole back line at times. It's just not a good trait to have someone to put him in higher risk situations. So I think Darren's comment is right. I think it's, and I don't know how to really change that, because if you drop him down to a lower level and put him on loan or anything, his physical attributes carry the day anyway, and maybe he doesn't learn what he needs to learn. I know we don't have massive expectations for this kid, but it's just hard because you see the physical attributes and you see some of the touch at times, his feet are so good, and you see how he can get aggressive and win the ball, and you think, man, we might have a player in our hands, but this stuff is the stuff you have to cut out. Like, you cannot play at this level if you're doing those things.
Yeah, Darren's comment, Darren 1878 NSNO said, Proper lingers on it like he has all the time in the world, doesn't he? When on the front foot or chasing a game, I think he's great, but in these battles, he just turns it over far too often. 2 moments on the day stand out for Tim, for me, just off the top of my head. On that Lewis Skelly run that we just talked about, he's just flat-footed in space. Skelly just goes right by him like there's nothing. Like, you should be moving your body, trying to catch him, or just foul him. Like, don't let him just go right by you. The other one was when he does a good job to win the ball, and he takes one decent touch, and he's on the break, and he has a ton of space in front of him, and he touches it probably 25 yards in front of him and just loses the ball. Just lack of control. And that's the ideal situation for him, right? He can run, he can carry it into space, something Moyes would probably want him to do, and he just completely flubs it. Not his best day. Unfortunate. But it is what it is. Bring on James Garner, someone who also hasn't been setting the world alight lately. So difficult sub. And, Broja for Beto, I think dramatically changes the way that we play. It's not a like-for-like sub. You have to play to Broja's strengths, and that's not launching it long.
Yeah, and I don't think we did that necessarily, or sending it long kind of into the channel so you can run it down a little bit sometimes. And I mean, he just approaches things differently. Like, Beto will contest aerials, and I think he did okay today on them. Broja kind of does the early bump sometimes to win it, but it's not going to work against some of these guys. I'd rather have him getting deeper and running with the ball because his size and his pace and power and ball control is pretty good and pretty unique in that way. But, again, I'm not expecting us to generate a ton of chances and kind of really get him into the game. But I'm kind of curious first, before we really talk about Broja and what to do with him, what were you guys' thoughts about Beto? I mean, some of the numbers are kind of interesting. I don't think he was phenomenal, but is this just him kind of not playing great or just feeding off scraps? I mean, you see the numbers, they're okay.
Yeah, and to what Ryan's saying is his numbers, Beto, 9 touches in the box, only 2 dispossessions, 1 for 1 in dribbles, 1 key pass, 2 for 3 in aerials, but 2 for 8 in ground duels, committed 4 fouls. I mean, I think it's unfortunate, right? Because as we talked about, he was on this insane scoring run and it's really dried up for him. But in terms of the actual performance, I thought he did pretty decent. Of course, as you mentioned, Ryan, really strong back heel in the beginning to Decore. I thought it's a very thankless job he has right now, and I also think the personnel around him is not the best in terms of just you look at Decore, Jack, of course Ndiaye, it's really welcome to have him back. I think for me also too, I am of the belief that Trimidi should be coming on before Broja, so it's especially one, he's a permanent player for us, and two, I want to see him
that a little bit, Sean.
Yeah,
I think it's a debate, right?
Yeah, and I think also, too, because the problem I think right now is you're putting Broja in a role that I don't think he's going to be very successful in as kind of the target striker, right? Not to say that Trimidi is the perfect target striker either, but his movement is so much more dynamic, I feel like. And I think when it comes to running with the ball and finding space, I just think he's done a better job in this setup. And of course, you look at the minutes, I think they've managed him well now coming back from injury that you'd expect to see him more. Really unfortunate that we didn't get to see him today.
I think I generally agree with the idea. I'd like to see Trimidi over Broja as well. But if you're bringing Broja on, I'd like to see him used more similarly to how we use Beto in the derby, where, like you just said, Ryan, playing into channels, letting him run on to things, not just launching it way up in the air and expecting him to win a physical battle against their center halves.
Is this the right team to do that against, though? Because I just feel like Arteta tends to play a little bit more defensive-oriented fullbacks. This might be a bad team.
Well, that's what I mean. I think in this type of game, this is where you'd want to see Trimidi, who's just bigger in general, more capable in the air.
Well, what do you think he's thinking on this one, too? Because he might just be thinking, look, I mean, you want to get a feel for both these guys, I think, ultimately. But maybe you're thinking that Arsenal's just a better team. this is big boy Premier League ball. I'm going to bring the bigger, strong, more experienced player on, maybe? I mean, maybe?
Well, guys, they tried to do that on every free kick. They moved the ball up 20 yards and then just tried to pass the ball. And every time they got called back, which was really funny because there were at least 3 or 4 moments where, it's just the foul was 10 yards back. And so, yeah. But then we get to, of course, the Royal Rumble in the 67th minute between Tark and Timber. What is Timber doing, like, at this point to just kind of, like, with Tark? He's only putting himself at risk defending the corner. It just doesn't make any sense to me because it's just, what are you going to get out of this?
It's kid stuff. I mean, Trossard, too, looking like he's attempting belly-to-belly suplexes every corner against JB like he's Magnum TA is just absolutely silly. No one's going to get that reference. But anyway, yeah, it's annoying. And I've said all year that they really need to clean up some of the officiating on the corners because I don't know what you do with it. It's funny, James and I were kind of talking off the pod, and this went in a very different direction. But, back in the day when someone held you like that, you just clobber them. You know what I mean? And you can't do that with VAR, but yet VAR won't necessarily go after the player for... I just think you need to, almost like holding in the NFL, I think you need to have some kind of rules in there about certain things that you can and cannot do and make it a little bit more objective. But God knows they don't ever try to make it easy for the Premier League referees. Anyway, I think moving on, this is an interesting sub in the 70th minute. I think bringing on Odegaard, who's their chief creator, was a concern, right? Because now they've got all their guys in. They've got the ball a lot. We don't look good to begin with, and you're thinking this is not going to be pretty. But thank goodness Nathan Patterson steps up here and really cements his role into the match and takes a man out in the third and getting a foul. We had a couple fouls here down the stretch. We're in bad positions and think maybe we got fortunate on it. But I just love the Discord reaction to this because it is exactly the Discord in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's the foul. It's just a late tackle. Completely mistimes it. Too quick for him. Pato hacks him down, and the Discord lights up. Nick Weinstein. Pato needs to go back to Scotland. I said, he's so bad. Sludvigs with just a crying, laughing emoji. And then Sean comes in. I have to say, Pato has done fine today, all things considered.
I mean, that is exactly Sean on the Discord constantly. Like, and sometimes we'll do it just to make people mad. Like, the Jack Harrison ones are the best. Like, Jack has been terrible all match. And Sean will be like, I've really appreciated Jack's contributions today. And everyone's like, oh, man. I feel like DL loses his mind every time you do it. It's so great. And then finally we make subs. And okay, Pato goes off. I don't know if Moyes just kind of shook his head at this one and said, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I don't think Patterson had a massive impact today, but okay, fine. It's not an easy gig out there, and he's playing on his, the left side, which he's not done too much. He's done a little bit, and I think a lot of this too was, somewhat was the response on Ndiaye coming down, pulling up limp, basically, which was probably just a cramp. But tell me, you guys weren't like, oh no, get him out of there immediately.
Saw him laying down. Moment of complete panic for me, and then I saw someone running over to just help him stretch his hamstring, and I was like, okay, phew, it's just cramp, which is totally reasonable given how long he's been out and how hard he worked today. So, and also happy to see Charlie come on and get more minutes as a substitute, not getting any closer to triggering that obligation to buy. So that was an interesting move, and then Arteta responds, bringing on Kieran Tierney for Lewis Skelly, which, again, he's just subbing guys on, I think trying to rotate for fresh legs. Again, they've got one eye off of this match already while simultaneously also trying to win it. But yeah, interesting subs. I mean, Patterson on the day, tough job for him. In some ways was a little reminiscent of other players we've had playing out of position at left back, in that he's just still very right-footed, and you saw that come through a number of times where he was very deliberately trying to move the ball onto his right when he may have been had a better play using his left. I won't run it into the ground, but he's off for Ashley Young. I don't know. What did you guys think of Pato on the day? Should we have a dialogue about it?
I think for him, it was a pretty decent day. I mean, of course, to Ryan's point, I troll a ton in the Discord just because, there needs to be a contrarian at times. But in terms of like him playing out of position, like also too, like you look at Jake O'Brien on the day, I don't think he had a great day. Like, I think also too, it's not an easy assignment, right? Like, yes, he's hacking these guys too, but I think you're going to get the bad with him in terms of just he's a clumsy defender. But I think overall on the day, he didn't make any fatal errors. And in a game like this, right, you have to appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, the early tackle was just, what are you doing? And look, he's going to have some moments where you shake your head. But it would be interesting, though, and we talked about this a little bit at one point, to see what he would do if he had a little more freedom as like a wingback. I think it's an interesting alternative, even if he's not your starting right back going forward. But they do probably have to make a decision on him sooner rather than later. You kind of wonder if you set him on low and at a lower level, he might do very well just because he's got some good attributes. But oh, well, yeah, fine. And I think the other problem is, too, I didn't really digest or think about this one too much because right after this, there's this play where the referee kind of lets them play on, and Trossard hits this shot at Pickford. This save is honestly one of the best saves I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm not exaggerating by saying this. I just cannot believe that it's one thing to have the reaction to save it, right? No big deal. If you're flat-footed and you make a reaction save, that's impressive, but whatever. And to have the strength to parry this one away, that's fine too. But the fact that he leaped and got movement and momentum off a leap, like he actually moved his body in about a half second off the ground and made a save that was strong off a hard hit ball. I am not exaggerating when I say this is one of the best saves I've ever seen. Like it's almost inhuman to even understand how he'd do that, and you could argue, well, he's short. He better be able to do that because the tall guys just kind of put their wingspan out. But it will go unnoticed that probably no one will think anything of it, but I just am in awe of this play. It is hard to wrap your head around that someone could do that. And it just shows you there are times where this guy is approaching really, really, I mean, he's always a good keeper. Not always. I mean, I think there was at one point where I was a little thought maybe he was overrated, but I mean, this guy delivers for club and country at this point to such a high level. And it's funny because we just have a couple top players now, or at least you could see them playing at a top level, and it just makes the stark contrast to some of the other guys so dramatic,
Yeah, in a world that, you have to worry, or you see a lot of Premier League clubs worry about the goalkeeping position, it's really nice that we don't have to. And to your point, Ryan, it's a shame because he's made some incredible saves to keep Everton a Premier League team. You look at kind of just his overall kind of portfolio, and for that one essentially to not really be included is kind of a travesty, because if that was in real time, real play, that's probably save of the season. And that's without seeing much, because to your point, there's just so many technical elements there that will be unappreciated.
Probably the most responsible guy today and getting to point him even in the 83rd when Martinelli had this is one where he's in so much space and has so much pace. I mean, there's no way O'Brien's going to do much here. Cuts inside, maybe could have forced him wide, but then Martinelli can tuck right in on guys. This is a fantastic save again by Pickford. He makes this look like it's nothing. Then a very interesting moment where Dwight McNeil finally comes back into the match. He's been out for months and months. I don't like the fact that they put him down the middle and put Charlie out right, though. I'm going to try not to look too much into that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later if there's a way we can mix everyone in. But can we talk about at the very end here, what on earth happened here? I'm so at Stylo _. Did the ref actually blow the full-time whistle twice, or did I imagine that? I don't think he imagined that.
That's a first for me that I've ever seen, and I think a lot of other people. You had a ref rescind the final whistle to allow Everton to take one last free kick.
Did he get a redo? Was it no, just kidding? Or what do you
allegedly VAR came in and said, no, the foul took place prior to the full stoppage time elapsing. You've got to let it play on. That's what I heard on the broadcast. It was,
oh my God.
Everton players immediately, when he blew it the first time, crowded around him and were complaining, and it almost looked like the complaints actually worked, but then I heard them say that VAR was like, no, you've got to let this play take place.
Hold up. Are you sure that's what they were complaining about? They weren't complaining that we have to take another set piece because Charlie Adams gives us about zero chance of scoring? Are you?
That could very well have been it, but I think they would have potentially gone to the sideline to berate Charlie Adam himself. But yeah, and ultimately, it doesn't matter because we completely waste the set piece anyway. You launch it, Ashley Young launches it forward, and nothing comes of it. But then we get the final whistle, and it's a 1-1 draw.
Okay, result, yes?
Yeah, for me, I'll take a point all day. I think I felt pretty good going into this fixture. I didn't really have too much reason outside of their squad rotation. I didn't realize we would rotate as much as they did. But at the same time, right, we just weren't on it today. We were just absorbing pressure. I think that last 10 or 15 minutes, it was just kind of a free-for-all in regards to them just tossing balls in the box and having some really decent chances. And so for us, it's nice. 2 draws against Arsenal this season, I'll take it.
So kind of bad performance, good point.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, we really missed our opportunity in the first half when they had their rotated guys in there, because midway through the second, they had pretty much put their best 11 on the pitch. And it's the penalty. That's all it is. And we talked about it already. It's a soft penalty. Wasteful for us to not really, we just went long a lot and not very effectively. And part of that is how good their defensive unit is and preventing Beto from really getting much involved. But it's also just poor distribution. I mean, 14 for 41 on long balls as a team. Pickford 7 for 23 just by himself. So it's Pickford sending the majority of the balls long, which is something we've seen Moyes do a little bit, but it was in some ways very reminiscent of Sean Dyche, honestly, in the fact that it was just long, ineffective, and led to nothing concrete. What's most disappointing for me, though, is the lack of creation from set pieces. In games like this, against top teams, you've got to make the most of the penalty chances you're given, which we were today, but also from set pieces when you're not going to be able to create in the final third as effectively, and we didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, James, it's just as a whole, right? Like even, the first few minutes of the game, the touches were incredibly sloppy, right? Pickford gets away with, of course. And at first I was just thinking, man, it's a really windy day, like for whatever reason. And it felt like the magnet was completely off the foot because it just, at 5-10 yards, of course, we'll give Tim a little bit of grace on his 30-yard touch. But at the end of the day, it just felt like they were just completely off of it for the possession side. And then I think, of course, I give a little bit of credit to Arsenal too, closing down angles, putting pressure on us, and just forcing us to make key decisions. And you saw the stark difference in class, right? When we tried to do that and they were just kind of kicking it around like it was just, a day in the park, right? So I think I give them credit there, but I think on for us, it's just, we had some really sloppy possession stats. And then you look at somebody like Decore, just one of his worst days, I would say, in regards to that piece.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to run tactics when you have the players that you've acquired over multiple years to run the tactics that are in your, kind of in your job jar anyway, And I just, the second half was just brutal again in terms of chance creation. I mean, 0.05 XG outside of the penalty? In the second half, too, we talked about touches in the box. The same thing happened against Liverpool. Second half touches in the box, 24 to Arsenal, 4 for Everton. And it felt like it. I mean, I guess we talked about the tackles. Like Everton had 3 tackles in the second half. Arsenal had 78% possession. I mean, come on, man. That's not good enough. But I'll say this. I mean, I guess it's worth to ask the question, is this just the subs? Just squad limitations? I mean, do we think we maybe ran out of gas a little bit? You're playing early Saturday after playing Wednesday in the derby. I mean, I get that. I mean, some of it's Arsenal personnel. Like you look at Saliba. I mean, he's just such a class. Like what was 8 for 9 in duels? I mean, just suffocating. So that's going to be a tough matchup no matter who you put up there. I mean, thankfully, Gabriel wasn't there. I mean, what do you guys think it is? It's just, I don't know. It just seems like 2 games in a row against very good teams. Top 2 teams in the league, right? Get it. Just absolutely nothing. No really even threat from an attacking standpoint. And I think the set pieces in particular really, really, really disappointing.
I really just think it's as simple as we played some teams that made us maybe a bit over-optimistic on what this very limited squad is ultimately capable of. And even saying that, we're coming out of 2 matches. We played the top 2 teams in the league, and we got 1 point, and the other one was tightly contested. We're staying in these games despite these teams being way better than us and really probably deserving to win by a little bit more. It's going to be a long month. It always was going to be a long month. If we get 2-3 points out of April, I think that's an unbelievable month for us overall. And we're on track to continue to do that. We're staying in games. There's no... And really, their goal, again, is originated from an error that we inflict on ourselves. These teams are not cutting us to shreds despite the personnel being miles and miles apart.
Yeah, and they're doing it in moments, I guess. So, I mean, there's something to be said for that. I mean, they put us under siege in the second half, and maybe they probably were a little disappointed about what they generated in the second half, too. I mean, in all seriousness. That being said, there still were some good performances, and this is where you look at the squad, and I think it's okay to get excited because you see a couple guys out there, and you're like, man, if we could just plug in some players of comparable quality, this would be a heck of a side. I don't know if you could do that in one window unless you maybe sell the girls team to a separate entity for $500 million, which, by the way, you should do considering PSR kind of runs out the way it's schemed now past this year. But anyway, I thought Idrissa Gana Gueye was once again outstanding. The header on the goal is not his fault, in my opinion. He's, of course, going to attack that ball. JB, I think, misread it, went forward for it. 4 of 6 in dribbles. No one had more than one successful dribble out there. 3 key passes. No one with more than one. 3 tackles led the team. Shocking stat there. 1 interception, 2 clearances, 1 block shot, 1 for 1 in long balls, which is a miracle compared to how poor we were. But man, he was so fluid on the ball at times, and it almost doesn't compute at this point. But he's just, maybe it also makes him look that much better because our other midfielders next to him are just absolute sidecars. But bravo for this guy. I swear to heavens, it's like he's found the fountain of youth.
Yeah, and my man of the match was Tim Bunham. I'm just kidding, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Some people out there were like, "Oh, we thought Tim played pretty well," and I'm like, "Look, man, you can have sympathy for the guy and not have high expectations, but he did not play well. I mean, come on."
No, he didn't. My man of the match was Iliman Ndiaye. I think pretty easy one. Of course, the penalty, cool, calm, and collected. 3 shots, fouled 3 times, 2 tackles, 2 clearances. And this is actually a very impressive stat, just given the rest of the team, but 84.6% pass accuracy. There were quite a few guys in the 40s and 50s today. The ball was going everywhere. And just once again, he's just the element of threat that we needed. I was also just, I know the Senegal brothers in Ghana, but like that play on the sideline where Ndiaye was just absolutely carving them to shreds, and then Ghana takes it from him and immediately loses it. So it's just like, just let the man cook, because and to your point, Ryan, like the plays that you see him just with his back to goal, it's just, he is so missed for us there because he is just such a massive threat in a team that doesn't have many.
Well, yeah, and if you want to start to control matches a little bit better, like think about this guy in a team, like put him on Arsenal, for example. I'm not suggesting he's moving to Arsenal, folks, but the point is, like, he can put guys on his back and hold the ball up. He can run at them, and they have to respect him and back off. Like, you put someone on the right side that's his equivalent, and think about it, man, they got him for peanuts, like $15 million. Unbelievable how good this guy is. And then you start thinking, like, you can start plugging and playing guys at different spots. I mean, think about how effective Arsenal are. Like, maybe they're not always scoring because they don't have that dominant number 9, but they control games so well, not just because they have the elite center backs, but because they have the wingers that get the ball out there, and you can't go after them. Like, you can't be dashing at Martinelli. Like, if he gets the ball in open space, you have to respect that. You have to back off to some extent, and you saw what happened when we didn't. I mean, that's what's exciting, if you start to match up guys in different areas, James, I just gave you this name, but, I mean...
It was who I... Honestly, one, right? After those two, it's slim pickings besides this guy, and that's Jordan Pickford. We've talked about... I mean, he really ultimately only had 3 saves, but that one that didn't count, quote-unquote, was the most impressive of the lot. And he kept us in the game in critical moments. They didn't have a lot of great chances to score, but he responded really well to the decent ones that they were able to create. And he's one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that we were able to get a point from this match, because it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, and then going into our comments, some really good ones. Sludvigs, of course, starts it with great point on a short break. Hopefully we could stay at full health to finish the season. Great to see Ndiaye and Dwight back. And then I think we really, a really kind of good discussion point that I think we should get into from DL. What I'd love to see as the opposition gets a bit easier is Ndiaye, Charlie, and McNeil all in there together. Guys, can we make Dwight, Charlie, and Ndiaye work?
What do you think about DL's suggestion of kind of... And we've talked about this a bit. Can Dwight McNeil play on the right? Because I don't like Charlie playing on the right, and I don't like Ndiaye playing on the right either. You could tell he wasn't comfortable playing there at Marseille, which he played a lot. And I think Ndiaye, the way Moyes wants to play a little bit, tucking guys into the half spaces more as kind of inside forwards, I think that probably makes Ndiaye a little bit more of a left-sided player rather than down the middle. I like the idea of Charlie running with the ball a little bit and facing from deeper. And I don't know if Charlie, I could see us getting another central attacking player and Charlie kind of backing up people, assuming we, exercise the option. I kind of wonder, can Dwight really work with the guy out wide? He's so left-footed. But I do like the idea of Ndiaye running with the ball or other guys and feeding him to get him on his left foot and using it in and around the box. Can this work?
I still have major concerns about Dwight playing on the right. I do think DL's comment, giving him a little bit of freedom to drift around, maybe, but we've tried this experiment. We've tried Dwight on the right. It hasn't really worked. Moyes might be able to figure out a way to put him in better positions to be successful, but I think the main thing that you get from Dwight is better set-piece delivery, which we know is sorely lacking today. So I almost think you in some ways try to shoehorn him in some way just to get those types of contributions. His ball delivery is so fantastic and so desperately needed right now.
I'd like to see him try it. And the only reason why is if you're going to go a little bit unbalanced where you've got Jake still back there playing a little bit more of a defensive fullback and maybe the left side pushed up a little higher, whether it's Patterson or Mikalenko, assuming he's okay. Dwight doesn't have to deal with that person on his right. He does kind of have a little more space that he's responsible for. And you can drop, Ndiaye and now just force a lot more of the play down the left side. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. I'm doubtful with it too, James. I just think you got a guy that one-footed, and knowing he is pretty successful on the left side. I also still would love to see him as a wingback. I think that'd be really, really interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting, Ryan, if Mikalenko, we find out, is out for a little bit of time, even trying him at left back at this point. Because, Patterson, we're just putting a different cast of characters, right? And we're testing guys out. And so, if you wanted to get him on the field, right, with, and of course, keeping Jack on, I think that still is an option. It's just, at this point, for Moyes, and I'll give him credit, it's like, why not try some of these guys? There's not really much to play for outside of just, getting higher up in the standings. And of course, we're in a brutal stretch right now. So it's just, at this point, right, you're kind of playing with house money.
I like the idea of playing the back three, and putting McNeil out at left wing back, Pato at the right wing back, and dropping Ghana in there with Gardner. And that way you can put Charlie in kind of Ndiaye sitting back behind the center forward. I think it'd be really interesting. I would love to see it. It'd be interesting to see how he plays it out. I don't want to see Dwight at the 10, though. Dear heavens, no. I like this next comment, too. I was a little concerned, like I said before, that Ndiaye coming in might be banged up. But, man, he is a difference maker. And he's a difference maker from an entertainment standpoint, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We had this comment from Ben Joe Eddie, who said, so good to see the Skilly Man back in action. Was cool as a cucumber taking the pen. Shout out to JP, the save from Trossard. Despite the fact it wouldn't have counted, was absolutely world class. Everton and England's number one for a reason. It was just spectacular. And yeah, the games are just inevitably much more entertaining when Illman has the ball. Honestly, if you could just shut off my brain this match and only watch the times when he had the ball, it would have been a much more entertaining watch overall.
Yeah, the match wasn't all that riveting. Here's some examples of Discord comments, like Wilfred, should have gone back to bed, hope the rest of our games aren't like that. And then I kind of like Carter, the Texan bobble, though. This is a pretty funny comment, by the way.
Yeah, he goes into when Dyche was sacked, a lot of people were saying that it was a mistake because he could get a point against big clubs. Clearly, we can still do that without him. And yeah, you're right, Carter. I think a point against Arsenal at home with the kind of skeleton crew that we have is definitely a credit to that. But now kind of going into another thought process, thoughts about players. We talked about, good performances from Ghana, Ndiaye, and Pickford. What about Abdoulaye Doucouré, especially kind of now, with it being kind of out there? Of course, don't know what to, trust for sure that he's not going to be at Everton next year.
Well, I think they're obviously hesitant to play Charlie because they want to have the option. But I think at this point, especially, Ghana's going to run out of gas. You want to give Irabunam a shot, I get that. But I'd rather Doucouré coming in either as I think also Doucouré being out there gives you a few more options. You can bring him at the 10 if you're trying to defend a lead. You can drop him deeper if you want to get up the pitch a little bit. And I think he's better use for there. But, the guy was 3 for 12 in duels today. We committed 2 fouls. He just... won a couple tackles, but just didn't create anything. It just looks like he's slowing down a lot. Maybe the season's wearing down on him. Maybe he has some injuries. I don't know. I appreciate his effort every time, but I just think I could see bringing him back as a useful bench player, maybe, but even then, I just think maybe it's time. My bigger concern, though, is someone like Tarkowski, who we've relied upon for a long time. If we're going to play a little higher and try and get control of a match, he's not really the best fit. So, are we concerned that he might start to kind of drop off a little bit too, maybe in terms of performance?
Yeah, it's a concern for a player on the other side of 30 now, but Tarkowski's also been the player who just never gets injured in an Everton team that's been riddled with it so much. I think his level has dropped the last couple games, and we've seen him, I think, worst side of him as a player, which is the reckless challenges in the box and the limitations in possession and things like that. But for the most part, I think he's actually had a pretty solid season. I think a lot of the just wear and tear of the campaign is probably starting to hit a lot of these guys who are a little bit older, besides Ghana, who's just completely immune to it. Tarkowski, I hope, is not starting for us next season, but I still think he's going to be a useful depth option off the bench. The fact that he's played every single game for Everton since he came is just commendable in itself, but he's not a starting player for where Everton need to be looking towards in the table.
Been a great signing, though, really. I mean,
100%.
He's been better. He's been better than I thought he would be. I admit. I was definitely concerned about it, and I feel like he's shown to be quite good and saved our tail in many ways. And in fact, if we could get this kind of performance from Freeze, I would hope to see a few more of them in the summer, you know?
Yeah, and I think also, too, the biggest worry with him early on, because I was very, very worried about him, was him playing next to Michael Keane, right? And then I think once JB started to get healthy. And
Great
then
point.
I think even Jake O'Brien being at right back and just being an absolute stud for most of the year since he's kind of been included again, you've seen a much better version of Tark. I still think his limitations, of course, you'll see on long balls, right? His speed is just not what it was.
Dropping off.
Yeah, it's dropping off. But I think that's that's aging, right? So it's like we're not, going to get on the guy so much
I don't
for
know
that.
what you're talking about.
You really don't know what I'm talking about because
my hair is great, by the way.
I know.
While we're on the topic, okay?
You are the youngest. I'm not going to put your age out there just for your own purpose, but you're doing really well, Ryan. But yeah, Tark is not somebody I am significantly worried about. But if he is starting for us truly going forward, that's probably not the best, especially given if we can keep JB and Jake.
Do we think we found out anything new or different by giving some of these guys a shot today in terms of the needs going forward? Kind of curious everyone's take on that one.
So for me, James and I were talking about it before the pod. It's very interesting with Jack. I know everyone is completely, or say everyone, a large majority of the fan base is out on Jack, but I do want to say one thing on him. He's as much of a two-way contributor as we have on the team, right? In terms of his defensive work rate, what he does. I do think he is one of those players that he is a lot better when the team around him is better. He's a lot worse when the team around him is worse, right? And you're seeing kind of, unfortunately, the quality that we have right now is probably not up to the standards. But in terms of, you look at kind of leads per se, and once again, they truly might bottle it again. I think for me, when I look at going forward in terms of the squad, continuity is important to some extent, right? You can't just bring in, 10 to 12 new players. We can't pull a Nottingham Forest and expect it to go swimmingly, right? So I'd be curious especially if they don't get promoted again, parachute payments start to basically expire. He's on decent wages. Is it a free transfer with reduced wages for a guy that can be decent squad depth, right? So if there are specific circumstances that could be had, I would welcome him back
Would you take him on a free?
Yeah, I would. I think, of course, we have a lot, smart businessmen at the helm now, right? So we're not just giving free money out or crazy contracts out to players, but, on a 2-year contract on controlled wages, yeah, I would highly consider that.
Kind of in the same camp, just for purposes of depth. And I'm still very skeptical of how much turnover we can realistically expect this summer. How much can we spend? Will he even want to come back to Everton? That I think is a totally fair question at this point. Might want to try his trade elsewhere. Rumors of him potentially being interested in a move back to MLS.
I mean, he's
he
28. Does he have a year left, maybe?
I think he has a year left on his deal with Leeds.
He shouldn't be expensive. I don't know. You're right. Those are all the factors, right, James?
Yeah, and I don't think he should be starting more than 5 or 10 games a season for Everton, but as a bench option, depth, we're going to need depth still. We're going to need a dramatically changed starting lineup as well, but we're going to need bit part players too. I don't know that he'll want that role for himself, though. I think that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, you can play all 3 forward positions too. I probably wouldn't. I would imagine they'd at least want $5 million for the guy, but it's a thought.
I mean, maybe Angus, wants $5 million for him, but then when he joins us, he'll it could be an under the table deal, right? But of course, the main reason we need him,
no conflict of interest there.
The main reason we need him is for Charlie, right? Charlie needs his best friend, and you could see that Dwight certainly is not his best friend as he instructed him on the pitch, middle, right? And Charlie's just like, I don't want to deal with this language issue. So yeah, it's just.
How about Charlie standing in front of the free kick?
That was so great.
Just smiling, I'll take a yellow, easy.
So I used to do this all the time back home, totally normal. All right. Pausing a little bit for those of you that weren't paying attention, Ipswich managed to bottle that match against Wolves and lost. So looking at the table real quickly, some people are still concerned that we're going down for some reason. I mean, you've had a rough go of it, by the way, as a club when you're still nervous at 35 points. We're at 35 points. We're only 2 behind Manchester United in 13th. West Ham are even with us, but much far behind us goal differential. Spurs are a plus 11 goal differential sitting at 16th. By the way, that's just a science experiment in so many ways about playing more open and scoring more goals theoretically brings more points, just mathematically, not seeing it. Wolves creeping up on us a little bit too, but Ipswich is at 20 points at this point after 31. Leicester can only get to 20. 7 matches, they're not getting 15 points, folks. I think it's over. Not to mention they'd have to jump Wolves, Spurs, and West Ham. The schedule's still difficult, right, folks? We've got to go at Forest, which... going from playing against an annoying guy named Timber and then playing at Forest. Something strange about that. You got Man City at home and at Chelsea. So the brutality of April continues. What do we think about Nottingham Forest, though? Is there some hope here that we can get anything accomplished against these guys? Because some of the underlying data points would indicate that maybe we could.
Well, there's some interesting history, Ryan, because if we're looking at American Toffee Fests and the stats there, we're 1-0 against them because that was the team that we played when we were in Chicago, right? And of course, funny enough, we're playing them again. But in all seriousness, of course, you have to give them a ton of credit this season. Third in the Premier League, but to your point, Ryan, 11th in expected points, a swing of 14.9. No other team has more than +6. A good addition, James. Quite insane. No injuries until recently. Of course, Chris Wood out. He might be out for that game. He's out for the Villa match today. Have only played 23 Premier League players 23 players in the Premier League. That's first for a team that has like 600 of them. That's quite impressive. Second in set pieces goals with 12. The lead is 13, 8 from corners. 10 headed goals first. That's not surprising with Chris Wood. 10 goals from outside the penalty area, tied for first. Callum Hudson-Odoi, of course, just that wand that he has curling from the right with 4. Lowest possession in the Premier League per Wyscout at 38.4%. So we're going to have the ball, right? It's a margin of what we do with it. We better do a lot better than today, I will say that. And lowest PPDA in the league at 15.14. Rarely pressure high, rarely foul, but second in interceptions. They don't sit back and block shots. Last season, I would say, is the real reversal, of course. We did finish ahead of them, believe it or not, 17th in the Premier League, but they were 12th in expected points with basically a reversal of 14.1, right? So they were really hard done by last season. Wild reversals when you think of it.
It's hard not to look at these guys and think they've been fortunate, though. You know what I mean?
Course.
No injuries. Playing only 23 players in the league. It's pretty crazy. But the real telltale is, like you said, the XG numbers. I mean, they've got all 3 of their forwards are blowing away their expected goals to goal ratio. I mean, Chris Wood has 18 goals on 0.6 XG. I think, and actually FB Ref has it even more dramatic, has him at a +6.2. That's the best in the league. And then if you look at what FB Ref also has is Callum Hudson-Odoi is at +2.8, 10th best in the league, and Alonga is at 14th best. I think the one thing is, too, these guys really fit the way Nuno wants to play too. They've got kind of the pacey wingers out there. They've got the big kind of bulldozer up front. It's a really good fit for what he wants to do. Then you can't ignore Morgan Gibbs-White, who's just the Energizer Bunny flying all over the place. And they put a lot of pressure on teams, those 4 guys independently. And that's why you take Wood out. It definitely changes their dynamic a little bit. But those 3 other guys, they're going to be a handful and difficult to deal with. And I don't know if we have the perfect personnel to deal with it. I think they've also been fortunate. They've gotten some very good goalkeeping as well and some decent defense.
Yeah, Matt Sells has been fantastic this season. And, in a team that has searched for keepers long and wide when they had Bryce Samba at their hands, from the beginning and just kind of gave him away for pennies, he's definitely fit the bill. Milinkovic has been an insane signing for them. I think he's been a perfect partner for Murillo. I think to your point, Ryan, they're getting good performances from guys that have been on their squad, like Nico Williams, Ola Aina, Ryan Yates, I think, has had a pretty decent season. And that's with Danilo being out, I think, from the beginning of the year with that injury. So, and even just watching Ibrahim Sangare play against United, he started to fit a little bit more. So I think all in all, they, of course, have been very fortunate with injuries, but I just think it's kind of that collective hole of getting a lot of good performances from guys at the same time, right? And of course, they've just been really, like, their style, leads to, if they're just clinical, they're gonna get some points, right? And we talk about Arsenal just having a ton of draws. They're winning games, right? So that makes a big difference when it comes to, being in those Champions League places.
Yeah, they've certainly shown a lot of composure. I mean, they came out the gates flying, and they have maintained that level. You have to give Nuno a ton of credit for what he's achieved. I do think the tactical sort of mix will be really interesting next weekend, because neither of us are going to want the ball, and they're not going to pressure, so we'll always employ maybe a more aggressive press against them. I think both teams will try to kind of sit back and force the other team to play into them, so it's going to be a bit of maybe hot potato with the ball. Very interested to see if Mikalenko is able to be fit for next weekend, because I do not have any interest in seeing Nathan Patterson, or Ashley Young for that matter, try to deputize at left back. That just feels like a recipe for disaster, and because their wingers have been so dangerous, I do think we need our quote-unquote full-strength back four in place to try to stymie that. And Branthwaite and Tark against Chris Wood, if he's fit for that match, very interesting matchup as well.
I will say this.
We've got some stuff to play for, too, just a little bit in terms of, if we want to make a big splash in the summer, I've done a lot of the numbers, and maybe I'll throw them on the Discord, but I think it's going to be a little bit tight for this fiscal year in terms of a financial fair play standpoint. It's not going to be bad or anything, because we get some credit for the sales of Onana and Mopai, so I think it's important. We have to still, I think finishing well will make that no problem, so we don't have to do anything wacky before July. I think July 1st we can spend some money. So it does matter, and we've got a chance of finishing high enough in the table, probably beyond what they expected.
If there was a game to try the back three, I think this could be it, in terms of if Moyes wanted to be a little bit creative with the personnel he has available, especially to your point, James, if Mikalenko's out, this could be the game to try Dwight McNeil at left wing back. This trying to have your best kind of personnel, Jake a little bit more familiar in the middle, as well as I think having Dwight in there for set pieces, right? If it's going to be a slugfest, trying to kind of really maximize our returns on scraps, if that's what the game turns into.
We'll be certainly very interested to see how it all unfolds. Of course, Sean and I will be watching with our fellow Toffees on the West Coast, looking forward to the early wake up and early party. Maybe have a little cheeky 7:30 a.m. brewski. We'll see what happens there. Otherwise, I think that's going to do it on this episode of The Blue Frontier. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you enjoy the show, please do us a solid. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the links in the description. Follow us on socials. All that good stuff. Join our Discord for sure. Otherwise, we'll be with you next time. Until then, up the Toffees.